so that we can get them some help. In addition, the grant is open for anyone, realtor member or not. But in addition, if you know of any realtors that have lost their office due to the floods, have lost their computer equipment, thanks to the generosity of Realtor.com, we've received a small check to help purchase some Google Chromebooks to provide to realtor members that may be that may not have any other resources to get back to business. So please contact me directly, nick@screaltors.org, if we can help in that regard. So today we have Lisa Jones. She is a principal at Carolina Flood Solutions. Lisa's knowledge of flood issues spans for more than 25 years. She has served in positions such as the chair of the Association of State Floodplain Managers, South Carolina's Flood Mitigation Coordinator, and has worked on FEMA's Flood Mitigation Assistant Grant programs, among other positions. Not that long ago, Lisa helped guide us and realtors across the country through the changes to the National Flood Insurance Program, also known as NFIP. We're pleased today that she's going to help us better understand how flood insurance claims are processed, how FEMA can help with these relief claims, practical flood cleanup considerations, and other tips on financing, renovations, and reconstruction. We're very excited to have Lisa with us today. We've put this webinar together on very short notice, and we're really glad that she reached out to us, and we're really pleased to have her here today. So without any further ado, Lisa, I'm going to hand the program over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick. Welcome, and thank you guys for having me come here. I hope that if any of you are flood victims, that you have registered at www.disasterassistance.gov. That is the key to getting all disaster assistance that's available to you, whether through SBA business interruption services or the FEMA grants, temporary housing, home repair, and things like that. So you have to start the process by registering at www.disasterassistance.gov. There's a myriad of disaster assistance claims that can be made. If you had flood insurance and you live in the special flood hazard area, you should contact your adjuster. You are required to mitigate. That means you need to remove anything from the house that is soaked, that's wet and damaged, so that further damage is not caused by mold or mildew, because that is not part of your claim. So you have to mitigate to the maximum extent possible. You also, as far as drywall, you need to cut your drywall 1 foot above the water line in the house and remove the insulation from behind the drywall, because the insulation will just wick the water up into the wall, cause further damage. You also need to preserve, for the adjuster on the inside of the house, you'll need to preserve the watermark. The adjuster has to see a visible watermark inside the structure. So you may cut the drywall at the top and bottom of it, but you need to preserve some sort of watermark inside the structure. The watermark from the outside that's visible on the back side once you remove the drywall and insulation is not acceptable. They have to see where the watermark was in the structure. In one of my clients' structure, they'd taken all the drywall out of the house completely and all the insulation. They'd done a complete demo except for the studs. And luckily, we were able to find the watermark on the fireplace glass cover. So it's really important that you preserve the watermark inside the structure as well as being able to mark it on the outside. But they have to be able to find that visible watermark inside the structure. Again, for relief claims, you need to file at www.disasterassistance.gov, or you can call the toll-free number, which is on FEMA's website. You have to dry out the inside of the structure. You can use fans, dehumidifiers. Crawl spaces have to be dried out to prevent further damage such as mold and mildew. As we go through this, if there are any questions, we're going to have, I'll take them as we go along. But I want to show you the impact that this had in South Carolina. you look at our next slide, this is after the flood. This is a realtor's home taken from the second-story window of his house. This is here in Columbia, in a popular neighborhood. And this is the after flood picture. As you can see, all the cars were parked in the driveway when the flood occurred. This is during the flood. This is when this was just before he was evacuated from his house. This is a Columbia realtor. And he thanked me because the only reason he said his garage is standing is because I had advised him to put flood vents inside his garage walls so that the water would equalize the pressure on the inside or outside and the outside of the structure. Once the waters receded, there was no damage to the interior of the structure that was caused by no structural damage. There was water damage, of course, but he could barely hose it off because it was a brick structure. And the cars floated. None of the windows broke because the hydrostatic pressure was equalized. So it was an amazing testimonial to what hydrostatic vents can do. And there were only 3 vents put in this garage. And those 3 vents were enough to equalize the pressure inside the garage so that the garage walls did not collapse or cause any structural damage. Interestingly enough, in this event, I also learned that the newer cars are made so when they are flooded, when a car is flooded, the trunk and windows open. So that's an important feature. We had a lot of roads washed out in Columbia and Richland County, as well as Lexington County and other parts of the state. It is very important that if you cannot see the lines on the road, either in daylight or at nighttime, that you not proceed through the water. Some cars have turned around and it appears that they have made it safely through the passage, but that is not the case. We've lost 17 lives to people who did not stop. 2 of those lives were because someone had removed a barrier. So please, 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 if you see a barrier there, it's there for a reason. The roads are structurally unsafe. They may look fine, but there is no dirt or a sufficient amount of dirt underneath the road to support the weight of a car. If you go on Facebook, there's a lot of pictures of the flooding, a lot of video, and I encourage you to look at that and see what's going on here in Columbia. We have to talk about substantial improvements and substantial damage here. The substantial improvements, we have in addition to an existing area, we have firewall and things like that you can add on. But when you get into substantial improvements, it's any repair, reconstruction, damage, rehabilitation to an existing structure that equals or exceeds 50% of the market value of the improvement, or the market value of the structure. So when you're looking at substantial damage, we have a lot of structures here that have been substantially damaged. So when we look at substantial damage, we're looking at the cost of the damage to the structure. What would it cost to restore the structure to its pre-damage condition compared to the market value? Those structures are taken into account in the counties, because most counties cities and counties have a 5-year cumulative period. Anything that's going to exceed one-time substantial damage to the structures are going to have to be brought into compliance. And we go back and we look at substantial improvement. Substantial improvement says the same thing, but it also takes into account if there are code violations that for health and safety and sanitary that were specifically identified, say maybe the electrical was unsafe prior to the flooding event or didn't meet code, those things could be excluded, but they had to have a code citation in order to exclude those items. So what does this mean? This means that structures, and particularly in these neighborhoods that you just saw that were built back in the early 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, those structures that were substantially damaged are going to have to be brought into compliance. I've given the association a handout that kind of walks you through, and this is one that I had prepared for the Home Builders Association, kind of walks you through what's going to be required. A lot of people are going to be making decisions whether or not to repair what they have if it's less than the 50%, or do a complete tear down and rebuild. But the first thing that's going to happen when you go to get a permit, they're going to look to see what flood zone you're in, and then they're going to tell you what requirements you have to meet. If you are in a flood hazard area and you have been, and you know if you have flood insurance what your claims were, you're going to have a determination whether or not you're substantially damaged. That has nothing to do with your insurance claim. You have to understand that the federal government does not share your information concerning your insurance claim immediately with the local government. They do not know specifically what items were paid for. They will see a dollar amount of the claim. And you also have to know that your claim is based on replacement cost if it's your primary residence. So any money you receive from your insurance, flood insurance, is going to be replacement cost value. If you notice here, the definition talks about market value. And market value is different from replacement cost value. Market value has some depreciation associated with it. Most local governments are going to use tax value of the structure only. Note that we do not insure land, so we don't take into account land. But they will use the tax value of the structure as a starting point for the substantial damage determination. If you accept that number, that figure, you can go ahead and get your permit, and they will tell you whether or not you need to elevate or bring your structure into compliance, or if you can just go ahead and do your repairs. In determining the substantial damage, we talked about this, they're typically going to start out with tax value as the initial, and then if we proceed, then they will use these other forms of information to determine whether or not the structure is substantially damaged. So let's look at what effect this has. We have a house that is, the tax value on the house is $200,000. We have a series of permits that was issued over the years for improvements over the last 5 years. We have one for $25,000, and we have one for $75,000. So we have a, let's do that 50, 25 and 50, okay? So we're up to $75,000 in accumulated permits for improvements on the structure. Now let's say we have $50,000 worth of damage to the house. What it's going to cost us to repair the house, be taken back to its pre-disaster condition. So when we look at that, we're looking at the $50,000 plus the $75,000 is $125,000, and then you've got the tax value is $200,000, and so we have our 50% threshold we had to meet in order for it to be substantially damaged or substantially improved. It is 50% of that, so that's $100,000. So we've exceeded that. So in that case, the structure would have to be brought into compliance. Not all communities have the 5-year cumulative provision, but most do. They did that as a way to prevent citizens from intentionally phasing in improvements or additions to avoid the substantial improvement threshold. Alterations, repair, and reconstruction or improvements. This is considered new construction. Appraisal reports. If you disagree with the tax assessment value being used in the determination for substantial damage or substantial improvement, you will need to have an appraisal done. That will be at your own expense and is not cost reimbursable by anybody. So if you want to appeal, you're going to have a tax appraisal done. It needs to be done at replacement cost value minus depreciation, or you can use comps. But it's for this disaster, because the disaster really started on October 1st when we started with the rain, the appraisal report would need to be dated prior to the disaster. So we're looking for a time and place appraisal prior to the disaster. So I am working with an appraiser on getting these types of appraisals done, so you can contact me individually if you need information on this. But again, it's the pre-disaster value of a structure, so it's a time and place appraisal, unless you had an appraisal that was done within the last 6 months. And it has to be on the structure only. It cannot include land. For example, one of my clients, their tax value, the tax assessment shows that the land is worth $200,000 and the structure is worth $91,000. So it cannot include the value of the land. It only is the value of the structure. No improvements to the land are included, such as driveways and things like that, because those things are not insurable and they're not factored into determination. Non-conforming buildings and uses in Richland County. Richland County has a provision, and I have a specific handout that will be emailed out to all of you after this event that kind of explains this, and it gives you the Richland County language specifically. But in general, in Richland County, they have a provision that says you cannot develop in the floodway. If you're in the floodway, you can build back to the exact footprint of the existing structure. The structure cannot be increased horizontally on the ground. It could be increased vertically, but the footprint cannot change. So if the structure is substantially damaged, in the case of my client who has a $90,000 structure, he can demolish his structure and he can rebuild using a different foundation system vertically, but he would have to be located above the base flood elevation plus 2 feet. Most communities have a 1 or 2 foot freeboard. Both City of Columbia and Richland County and Forest Acres have 2 foot freeboards. Non-substantial improvements. Non-substantial improvements, they have to, they can get a permit to replace the work. We encourage you, though, to do things to mitigate future damage. This also, this may sound like a pain in the rear end for to do this, but it will save you money on your flood insurance. So you want to raise your heating and air conditioning units up off the ground. If you can change your ductwork from flowing underneath the crawl space to running through the attic, that is a better thing to do than having it go through the crawl space and get flooded again. The ductwork is a component of the electrical and mechanical equipment servicing the building and would have to be mitigated as well. You need to put flood openings in those crawl spaces. It's very important. I will also, they say this, and the note at the bottom, make sure all your proposed work is in the initial permit application. If you put in, you have to disclose line item by line item how much you're spending on flooring, ceiling, wall material, roofing. If you decide, if you price in your estimate that you're going to be putting in a vinyl flooring, your costs are associated with vinyl flooring, and they walk in, these inspectors walk in there and see marble flooring, they're going to recalculate your substantial damage determination based on what you actually did. If you pull a permit for $110,000 and you've done $150,000 worth of work because you didn't want to pay the permit fee associated with $150,000 worth of work, and they catch it, you will be required to bring the work you did into compliance or rip it out. I have a lot of people who went ahead this week, and you are required to have a building permit to do any work for any repair or replacement in the floodplain, period. There's no dollar value associated with it. We had a lot of people who went in this week and had their HVAC guy come in and fix their heating and air for the structure. If it's later determined that that heating and air conditioning unit was required to be elevated, they're going to have to pay for that cost of doing so. The ductwork was in the crawl space and it got flooded, and they went ahead and repaired all that without a permit, and it's later determined that the ductwork and HVAC has to be elevated. Then they're going to pay, the homeowner will pay out of his pocket to rerun the ductwork in a different configuration so it does not get flooded. So what we're encouraging people to do, they're not substantially damaged or a substantial improvement, is to think about long-term mitigation. What can we do so this does not happen again and you don't have this expense again? Another big issue that's coming about is basements. Basements in the floodplain. If you have a basement in the floodplain and you are substantially damaged, basements are not allowed. You will be required to fill in your basement and you can add on to the house somewhere else, but you will lose that basement space. If you're doing, if you were not substantially damaged, you want to do a renovation, we encourage you to renovate. The addition to renovate and elevate the existing building. If it's a substantial improvement, you're going to have to do that. So let's say you want a new kitchen. The kitchen is on the $90,000 house. The kitchen's $70,000. Then you would have to elevate the structure. Lateral additions only. They could require that the addition be elevated, or they will require the addition be elevated, and as long as you're not making any improvements to the existing structure other than cutting through a doorway, then they will allow you to do the addition. Now, what happens if you are substantially damaged or substantially improved? Your date of construction on your flood insurance policy resets to today's date once you exceed that 50%. So if it was a pre-firm structure, it will now be rated as post-firm, and you will be charged by a rating structure based on the number of feet above the base of flood elevation rather than being grandfathered. If you do an addition plus other work and that exceeds 50% of the market value, then you're going to have to add both. I have a lot of clients right now. One client who was planning on doing a renovation to her house, and now she's decided just to build a whole new house because she had 40 inches of water in her home. So they're just going to tear it down and rebuild. But you can do combination at the same time as you're doing the repairing the damage to the structure. You could also do a modification that would include an addition. But everything you do has to be disclosed in that initial permit. If you come in and put your permit in for repair work first, and then as you get started through this, I really should do the addition now. You're going to go in for a second permit. Your permits are added cumulatively, and you're going to be required to bring the structures in compliance if it exceeds the 50% threshold. So you have a pre-damaged building, market value. You have your repair pre-damage with the condition 62%. Then you have to get a permit, and you're going to be required to elevate. It doesn't matter whether it's fire, wind, flood, or a truck driving into the building. If the building is substantially damaged, then you will be required to elevate. When paying for how to pay for it, this is good. This is really good. Most people don't realize that there's a provision in your ordinance, in your policy, that would allow you to elevate your structure, either or demolish the structure and build a new one, or move the house to higher ground. You're allowed to do that. There's up to $30,000 included in your policy called ICC coverage that will give you money to do that. It will not exceed the $250,000 cap on the policy or the face value of the policy, whichever is less. So, for example, if I had a policy coverage for the full $250,000 and my damage was determined by the adjuster was $200,000, and I decided I wanted to demolish my structure and rebuild, I would have up to $30,000 to help pay for the demolition costs. If I decided I wanted to elevate my house, then I would have up to $30,000 to help pay for that. So I would get an additional up to $30,000 of the actual cost to do that work. What do you do with a one-story ranch building? One-story ranch building, you could elevate the interior floors and bring it up that way, and just come up vertically and extend the structure up, increase the size of the crawl space, the height of the crawl space, and build a new interior floor, raise the roof line. Would be an easy way to do for a ranch building, provided that the foundation can support the additional weight. We're seeing a lot of foundation damage. The foundation damage is caused because they had insufficient openings and the hydrostatic pressure could not equalize on the inside of the crawl space wall. And the county and the cities have said that they are seeing a lot of work occurring without permits. If they catch you doing work without a permit, the homeowner is fined $1,092 in Richland and City of Columbia. That's an expensive fine for not going to get a permit. I'm also going to caution you to work only with licensed contractors. There's a lot of people who have shown up from out of state. They have no ties to this community. They need to go down and get a business license for the City of Columbia or Richland County if they're doing work in those areas. If they do not have a business license, they're not paying taxes to our communities, which is part of our tax base. They're coming in and they're taking your money and they're going to go back to their state and spend it. So please make sure that these people that you're dealing with are licensed contractors. They can get down to LLR and get a temporary license to operate in South Carolina. If a license is required, most contractors are. The only one I don't think is licensed is remediation companies. But everybody else is licensed by LLR. And please make sure that they have a business license from your community, issued from your community. They're not, they can go down to City Hall or to the business office and get that license. It takes about 10 minutes. But they need to have a business license, and they should be able to show you that. They're going to come in, there are a lot of these are coming in from out of state, and they see a quick buck that they can make, and they're going door to door. So please make sure that they're leaving a little bit of the money back in the community by getting their business licenses before they start work on your house. Preform buildings can be elevated vertically. You know, I've heard people say, well, I can't elevate it. I've got a slab on grade building. I can't elevate that. Yes, you can elevate it. You know, when you're looking at elevating a house, you're looking almost at house moving companies are the types of companies that are going to be able to assist us with elevating a house. Most foundation companies are used to shoring up foundations, but they don't have the equipment to raise a house. So we're really looking at companies that are geared towards house moving because they have the equipment to and the lifts to vertically lift those structures rather than just small jacks to jack up one corner of the foundation and shore it up. So the ICC is one way you can pay for your renovation. And let's talk about how you can finance some of these renovations that you are going to require to do because of the disaster. There are several HUD programs or FHA programs that you can utilize to do that. One is the 203K loan program, and the other one is the 203H program. They're both FHA. There's another program through SBA where you can get a low interest loan. I believe the rate is 1.38%. You can borrow up to $200,000 on that SBA loan to make your renovations or repairs or rebuild your structure. That is a very cheap loan. If you have a business and you have suffered damage to your inventory or fixtures, you can borrow up to $2 million. They also have an economic injury loan that is up to $2 million that you can borrow for SBA. They have business interruption. So there's resources out there, but you have to apply for them through www.disasterassistance.gov. That's how you access all of this. For example, it was brought up last night at a meeting I attended. If you are self-employed and you lost your income because of the flooding event, you can go down and file with Unemployment's office, South Carolina Workforce. You can file for unemployment. You will be denied, but there's a disaster unemployment program that will kick in. So if you had 1099 employees or you had a business, when that disaster unemployment kicks in, it does not go back against your unemployment insurance. It does not factor in if it kicks in with a disaster unemployment. So that will not affect your future premiums for unemployment insurance, which is a great benefit to those people who are self-employed, such as realtors. So we talked about preform structures. You know, this is the effect of bigot waters. just remember the structures that were built pre-firm that prior to the initial flood insurance rate map, they're going up 15 to 18% a year until they hit full risk rate. So in this example, full risk rate premium is about $7,900. If the structure is substantially damaged, you need to factor in that insurance savings over the years, because your insurance when you rebuild your house could be $400 or $500. So I'm encouraging my clients to rebuild their homes with the premiums in mind. What do they want to pay for flood insurance? A client today I spoke with who's paying $2,200 a year for flood insurance, and we calculated that his insurance premium, once he rebuilds his house, will drop down to about $438. That's a big savings every year. So that'll help pay for the reconstruction of his home. So people are at a nexus right now where they need to make some important decisions. The first thing I can say is slow down. Everybody wants you to make a decision right now. You have people bombarding you with information. The one thing you need to stop and do is think things through. If your house was completely destroyed by a flood, you had 10 feet of water in the house was completely submerged, you lost all your contents, and you're going to be substantially damaged. Think about whether or not you want to rebuild your house or whether you want to elevate the existing house. Because if you decide you're going to tear down the house and rebuild it, there's no point in spending between $20,000 and $25,000 on remediation to prevent mold and mildew. Everybody in this environment, people are overwhelmed, and some of you may be as well. Stop, think things through clearly. Ask your friends for advice, your family. I know that you feel like you have to do something in order to feel like you're accomplishing something at this time, but the most important thing for you to stop and think about this, what your long-term goals are, and come up with a plan. And I'm advising my clients to do that. So for older homes, you've got crawl spaces down here. You want to relocate your ductwork and furnaces out of the basement areas of crawl spaces. And we don't want to store anything that's valuable in a basement or crawl space because there are exclusions to the policy. There are some mitigation money that will be available down the road next year. But it's going to be a year before any of the mitigation grants kick in. We have a hazard mitigation program, the flood mitigation program. They're at least a year away before they start even thinking about accepting applications. And then after that, it's an 18-month process. So what I encourage you to do is to make your decisions now about what it is you want to do that's in your best interest. If you need help or assistance, you can call me, and I'll put my telephone number up here. How do I get up here? Can you make that big for me again? Here we go. It's 803. Can you type that up for me? I don't know how to do that. Okay, sorry. It's 803-730-8626. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
I'll just type it in.
Yeah, he'll type it in up there for you. It's 803-730-8626. Or you can email me at lisa@carolinafloodsolutions.com. If you do, please put your complete property address in the subject line. I'm not here looking for business, but if you have questions, I'm willing to assist you. I'm also going to ask that I'm going to give you a series of numbers that the association will put on their website where you can call for assistance. If you have questions about the unemployment insurance and things like that, there'll be a number you can call and ask questions about that. The tax filing deadlines have been extended as well. Tax filing deadlines, if you have to file by October 15th, has been extended to February 16th if you live in a disaster county, a county that's been declared federally disaster. So for those living in Richland, Lexington counties, and a few other counties across the state, there is a extension until February 16th with the IRS for you to file your federal taxes. For those people living in Richland County, the tax assessor and, the treasurer in the auditor's office have decided to delay mailing of the tax bills for 30 days and extending the payment deadline by 30 days. So tax bills that are usually mailed out November 1st won't go out until, they won't go out this month, they're usually mailed this month. They won't be mailed until November 1st. And the deadline, which is usually January, will not be until February 16th. So there will be a delay. If you had a vehicle that was totaled because of the flood, and this is very important because we're all looking for cash right now to gather and get our lives back together. But if you had a vehicle that is damaged by the flood and it is a total loss, you can take your tag to DMV and turn it in and take that receipt back to the county tax department, and they will refund you the prorated balance on your property taxes you paid for your vehicle, on the vehicle taxes. So you'll be able to or you can apply it to your new vehicle. But are there any questions?
Yeah, we've got one person who's asks, do you think there will be a moratorium for flood insurance in this area going forward for a period of time?
There will be no moratorium on this. Flood insurance is not, flood insurance is run by the federal government. It is not a traditional property and casualty insurance company, and it doesn't operate like that. So if you have an accident with your car, you have 3 accidents, they keep increasing your insurance rates. Unless you become a structure that is a repetitive loss structure where you've had multiple claims, it's not going to affect your insurance premiums.
What options are available for people without flood insurance?
For those people without flood insurance is the only thing that's available to assist you with making you whole. Without flood insurance, your options are going to be, there's up to $33,000 available from FEMA, and that's based on income. And then there's other assistance for through the SBA loan process. You've got unemployment disaster assistance and things like that. If you had a rental property, you can go through SBA to get an SBA loan related to your loss of income from a rental property. It's a business loan. So you can't go down to unemployment file because you lost a renter. But you can go down and file under SBA for business interruption.
If your home or business is not on a flood zone, are you still able to purchase coverage?
Yes, if you do not live in a flood hazard area, you are available to purchase flood insurance. You can qualify for what we call a preferred risk policy, which is that policy that you see advertised on TV every now and then that begins at $129. You can purchase building and contents coverage or contents only coverage, but you cannot purchase building only coverage.
Also, just so everyone knows, all the resources that Lisa was talking about that she's going to provide for us to post on the website, we'll be posting that to screaltors.org/flood. And also, if you were affected by this, definitely check out screaltors.org/relief. We're giving some mortgage relief for individuals whose primary residence has been affected by this. So there's an application live now, and if you know anyone, they don't necessarily have to be a Realtor member to apply for that. So make sure you spread the word. We've got posts on our Facebook page, so if you haven't shared that yet, make sure you go on there and share that for any of your clients or any of your colleagues who may have been affected by the flood.
And just to give you some numbers of what we're looking at so far, we've had 40. We've estimated that there are 48,000 people who were affected by this disaster. We have 28,000 people who are not living in their homes. They're not living in their primary residence. 28,000 people. We have 42,000 people who have registered for disaster assistance as of last night, and FEMA so far has paid out $17 million in assistance. One other thing I'm going to encourage you to do is go to Red Cross and see if you can qualify for some assistance there. If you didn't have insurance, Salvation Army. These charities all have disaster assistance programs that can help you. If I can do anything to help you guys, either through mitigation or plans, but this is a unique opportunity because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're going to have some people who are going to elevate their houses and some people who are not. The resale value on the houses that are elevated, because this is a national disaster, it was all over the national media, those houses are going to fare better on the resale value. The ones who choose not to elevate may not. This was a cataclysmic event in which we had heavy rainfalls, but at the same time, we had a series of dam failures. We have small dams up here in Richland County on one watershed, and we had a series of dam failures that compounded with the heavy rainfall to create a cataclysmic event that basically we didn't, you could have made a movie about, but nobody would really think they would see it in this lifetime, this, happening in Columbia, South Carolina. But it was a series of things. This is not a 1,000-year flood. And the flood levels in this were less than, in some areas, were less than the flood levels of a 100-year flood. It was a 1,000-year rainfall event. Now, what does that mean? What's a 100-year flood or a 1,000-year flood? A 100-year flood is a 1% chance of it occurring in any year, any day. But a 1,000-year event is 0.1. It doesn't mean it's going to, we've had it now, we're not going to have it for 1,000 years. What we're looking at is it can happen any day, any year. If you don't have flood insurance, buy a policy, even minimum policy. Those policies are transferable to future owners, but at least you have some coverage to protect yourselves. I want to thank you for having me today. And if you have any more questions,
email us.
Email the association and they'll forward them to me.
And that email address, you can email information@screaltors.org, and we'll go ahead and forward those.
Well, thank you for your time today and having me come speak to you.